So Helen, could you tell us a little bit about what love addiction actually is?
Love addiction often happens when, more often than not, somebody will be most drawn to somebody that they have a crush on or an infatuation, and often it's unrequited or that it doesn't come back, and that's the real issue, because what's at the cause of love addiction is rejection. But anyway, I'll be speaking about that a little bit more later.
So you're saying that the core of love addiction is rejection, actually. So people will often shy away from neediness or pressure when they meet someone. So you say it's actually rejection that causes the love addiction.
Yes, because often, I mean, it's an ironic twist that the more needy and pressurizing and smothering that somebody is, the more that the love addict will often become more and more hungry for love, a yearning and a longing for love.
So how does that happen between two people then? Would the love addicted person necessarily be attracted to someone with whom they don't know, that they might have met them online, for example, or at a distance, or in passing? How does it work?
Well, how it actually works is, more often than not, it can be experienced as one might say, as love at first sight. But a lot of love addicts, for instance, could meet somebody online. So even without meeting that person in flesh, there's already a longing for to be loved. The love addiction is already like a drug, and they've immediately, within just reading their profile, for instance, online, they will immediately get caught in a kind of a hook, particularly if the person on the receiving end says something perhaps which might be of a tender nature or something overtly sexual, where they actually believe, this is where the denial comes into it, they actually believe at that point that the other one feels exactly the same as them. And that's why love addiction has a lot to do with fantasy and denial, when really it could be completely neutral on the other side, and if anything, quite unrequited.
So that's quite interesting. So is it just love addictions are just people that don't know each other, or can love addiction happen between two people who are in a relationship already together?
It can be both, but more often than not, if somebody that suffers from this kind of problem, I call it a condition of the heart. It could also be called loving too much. If they're in a relationship with someone, it will often, the dynamic will often be triggered by the partner's withdrawal from the relationship.
That's quite interesting.
Can I just say something a little bit further about that? In other words, there'll be the other person, for instance, might become very unpresent, so that so that's a complete trigger for the love addicted person. The more withdrawn the other person is, the more they feel rejected by their partner, the more, for instance, the partner might go on long distance travels, work commitments and different things like that, the stronger the love addiction gets at that point.
So could you tell us from your experience regarding the people you've just mentioned, or the types of people or relationships that you've just mentioned, some of the ways a love addicted person might act out if they feel that their love is unrequited or out of balance?
Well, first of all, it would again depend on whether it was online, an addiction online. But let's take it that it's happening within a relationship, where there's also that whole dynamic of codependency going on. How actually show itself would be repetition of phone calls, emailing, texting, any kind of online thing. I mean, I've known people that, you know, over this 22 years that might email or text their partners at least 100 or 150 times a day.
Wow.
So much that it's causing them a huge issue at work, or if it's you know, a mother with children, they're on the phone to their husbands all day, and if he's in a meeting, it has no love addiction itself has no sense of empathy or what the other person is doing. It doesn't live in its own reality. So in other words, most people might, for instance, think, well, I won't ring him or her now or text because I know that they're in a meeting or that they're, you know, overseas or something. But the love addicted person, that doesn't play at all in their minds. It's just an immediate gratification. So,
could you say something about the difference between healthy romantic love, as say, or and hungry love or love addiction?
Healthy, romantic, mature love. Well, I'll go into that afterwards because I run a workshop a couple of months ago called the 5-6 stages of love. So it begins with romantic love, and then it moves into what's called acceptance or power struggles. I've got it here. And then it moves into stability, and then it moves into mature love and romantic love, and then union, where two people become one, but they live together apart. So it's not a fused relationship, it's something quite different from that.
So at what stage does love addiction occur then, within those stages of love, when we're attracted to someone? When would that might show its face?
Often it gets locked in to the romantic stage, because for the love addict, they are in love with love. That is the drug, that's the fix. But more often than not, if the fixation doesn't happen then, it will happen in the power struggle stage, which is the second stage of love that most relationships go through when they're, you know, getting to know one another.
So, could you tell us a little bit about how someone can move towards fantasy and denial when they're in the love addiction state? You spoke about that a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe talk about chemicals that might be present, and when someone experiences attraction or a crush on someone, how does that work?
Well, what actually happens, and this actually does happen, when two people fall in love, there are bodily brain chemicals that are released in the body, one of them being serotonin. That's often, as we all know, serotonin is used for depression, so it's an uplifter. The other one is dopamine, that's produced with exercise, and the main one is oxytocin, which women in pregnancy, when they're within the pregnancy, the body secretes oxytocin. So there's, other than the fact that love addiction stands on its own, it actually is a real chemical addiction, which is why it's often acquainted to being in the withdrawal stage. If one's trying to free themselves from love addiction, that's why it really is like coming down from a drug addiction, going cold turkey, literally.
So finally, Helen, could you tell us how your recovery programs can help those people who may experience this type of love addiction, and maybe some useful tips to help people survive the withdrawal or the breakdown that's caused by love addiction or codependency? That would be quite good if you could.
Well, one of the things that I didn't mention before, and this will go on to that question that you've just asked me, is that one of the causes of love addiction, more often than not, comes from a sense of neglect in early childhood, particularly from birth up until 5, 6, 7 years of age. What actually happens with why that reinforces the love addiction is that children that for one reason or another, whether their parents have been separated, whether one or either parent isn't present or has died in early childhood, there's what actually happens is that if there's a lack of mirroring and a secure base in one's primary, through one's primary caregivers, what actually happens is that the child goes into a world of one's own, often in a sense of longing and loneliness, living out a fantasy life of their own. One particular case comes to mind, but I can speak about that afterwards. So there's a sense of longing for love, a yearning for love, but it's huge, and it's something that can never really be replaced. So what actually happens with the sufferer of this condition of the heart is that they'll project the hook onto somebody that they feel will return that love, so that they get the love that they want, to kind of recreate the primary years that they missed out on that love through neglect. So what my recovery programs are actually about, they're about really working on what me as a therapist, being a well-polished mirror, working on one's own sense of self, one's self-esteem, self-confidence, self-validation, and confirming that to my clients, obviously if this is coming from overseas, but a very good therapist that works with validation and confirmation of self, so that it draws the projection from the person that they're projecting onto, and we take it back into the self. So there's a lot of a personal discovery of oneself, and self-transformation has to occur. So often, more than not, I use a whole range of things, from journal writing, CBT, deep visualization and relaxation, but everything is moving towards allowing that, not allowing, that's the wrong way to put it, but getting that person to reconnect with the lost self, so that it internalizes itself. And so when they meet someone, the sufferer meets someone, it's a healthy kind of love or attraction or crush, whatever it is, and so it stays as an independent self, not a fusing, merging relationship whereby two people become two peas in a pod and feel so familiar that people actually feel that they've met their soulmate, and so this is why they can't let them go. So I work with people to help them survive the withdrawal on that level, if that makes sense.
It does. And how can people access your recovery programs, Helen? Where would they need to contact?
Well, what I'll be doing after this, there'll be a whole range of different things on my website. programs that they can buy, and also just reading my website alone will be really helpful for them with tips and different things that they can use to access that.
And your website is
www.helenmiaharris.com. Okay.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.